Hey everyone, it's Nicole and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm here today with a layout for Just Nick, which is my digital die cutting store. So today I'm going to be using the Hello Spring cut file. You can see I've already got it cut out just as some white cardstock on my silhouette mat, and I'm just taking out the inside bits. I'm going to keep these inside bits just to kind of get my pieces lined up, but you certainly could do it a different way, which I will end up doing as well. And I'm just removing this from the mat, and you can see I have one of the silhouette spatulas there. And it's actually a really handy tool to get if you're going to take designs like this, really delicate type stuff, off your mat. You can see you can just kind of spread it underneath, and it doesn't really distort your cut file because the lines are quite thin for this one, so you do have to be a little gentle with it. I'm just removing some of the little tiny bits the silhouette cut, but it didn't pop out naturally. And then I'm going to go ahead and fill it. I have a whole bunch of paper here I want to use from Pink Paisley, and I'm going to just use the letters kind of like a little template and go around the different squares around these two sheets of paper and just choose the different colors that I want. And I'm going to kind of line it up in a word so I can kind of see the patterns and colors together, and I'm making sure just to kind of not have the same kind of colors beside each other. Can I say kind of? One more time, because I just realized I said that 3 times. Anyway, I'm just going to keep going using as many different colors as I can, because it's the page about spring, and spring to me is lots of fun color, and I just love that, because I love lots of color on the pages. I'm just using all different kind of colors, and the best part is using these two different papers is you get lots of pattern and color for like barely anything, like really how much are 2 sheets of paper. So it's a pretty cheap way to get a lot of stuff on your page as well. So, all right, now I think I have pretty much all of the letters done. And then really from there, once I have all the colors and patterns chosen, I'm just going to go ahead and getting them ready to go behind my cut file. So the first way I'm going to try doing this is probably the one way that's easiest for most people, and that's just to kind of take the leftover scrap of whatever shape it is, in this case it's a letter, and just trim probably about 1/4 of an inch around with my scissors by hand. This is a good way to do it if you're using different patterns of paper. If not, you could obviously cut the design again out of pattern paper, and you'd have 2 Hello Springs and everything would be pink, for example. So I'm just going to add that in behind. Now that's not my favorite way of doing this because I find I still have to do a little bit trimming afterwards, and getting even the tiny little thin lines to kind of match up is a bit of a pain for me. So this is the way I prefer to do things most of the time, and that's just by adding, I have like a dot runner adhesive I add behind the back of the cut file, or I use adhesive cardstock from Silhouette, and then I just add the whole piece of paper in behind and then trim it around. Sometimes I use my X-Acto knife like I'm doing here, but most of the time I would say I use my trusty little scissors here. These are just a cheap pair I got at our local scrapbook store by Fiskars. I think they were $5 or something like that. I picked them up probably about 6 years ago, so they're still quite good, and I like them. And they're a nice small size. They're not super bulky. They're good to get in those tiny little bits. So same thing, I'm just going to add adhesive to the back and then run my paper behind it, and you can see for easier letters, obviously like these L's, it goes pretty quickly. The tricky part is kind of keeping the cut file like this one all kind of together, because it is a pretty, like I said, a pretty thin lined one, so you have to be a little careful. But as you kind of get all your papers on there, it really helps kind of stabilize it a little bit, makes it a little tougher, a little stronger. So I'm going to go ahead and, just for the sake of doing that, is add my adhesive and then get all the kind of colors of paper in behind, making sure I'm getting my letters kind of lined up nicely. And then I'll remove some of the little bits. So it kind of helps keep it a little more manageable, because when it is a thinner design like this one, sometimes it's hard to kind of get everything on there without ripping it or having it fall apart. And I was pretty lucky with this one because it is pretty thin that it didn't fall apart at all on me. So that's always good. So it's just a matter of choosing what colors and what patterns you want, and then getting in there and being a little finicky. So I filled the whole thing in, and I've added some low profile foam adhesive to the back of it. And I'm just putting on the background with this blue kind of watercolory washed pattern paper. Because I'm using so many patterns in the title, I just really left the rest of it kind of plain, which is fine for me. So I'm just going to go ahead take off that backing and then stick it down. The trick to this is to get it straight. So sorry about my head in there. But the foam adhesive I'm using is pretty good that you can lift it up a little bit if you have to. And then I'm just tucking some tiny little bits underneath my flowers. I know I'm going to fill in the centers of the flowers later anyway, so I'm not too worried if any of that black foam adhesive shows through. And I just kind of want that all to be the same level on my page. And that's kind of first part of the hard part of this project. It's a pretty simple project, but there's lots of fussy, finicky bits to it. So I have this pretty paper from Pink Paisley, and I'm just going to cut a whole ton of flowers now out of it. To me, this paper was meant to be cut. There's so many fun shapes and colors of flowers. I thought it would be perfect to go along with that Hello Spring title. And I just happened to have this picture of my son who picked me some, he calls them flowers, but these are some weeds he picked for me one day. I think he was probably 7 years old. So it was pretty cute at the time, so I took a picture of it. I'm just going to cut a whole bunch of flowers, and what I'm trying to do is pick different sizes, and some of these different ones that are longer, so like this purple here, it'll create a little bit more movement in the page if I have different shapes and sizes and colors. So I'm going to pick a neutral kind of checked polka dot pattern paper behind my photo, just to get some pattern on the bottom of the page, and then I'm going to go ahead and just fool around with my flowers. Now I'm taking my pencil and I'm just using it to kind of curl up the edges of my photo or my flowers a little bit. And you can see I'm just placing them kind of in and around that title on the top half of my page. And for the most part, I really will play around with this quite a bit. I'm going to add foam adhesive behind all of the flowers to give it just a tiny bit of dimension. This is the same level that I added in behind the title, so it's all going to be kind of up there and poppy. And the good thing about this is I'm not peeling off the backing of the foam adhesive, so it really enables me to kind of move things around, and I can see kind of the balance of the height with the pop dots in behind it, except for that purple one there, the longer one. I committed to that one, so I stuck that one down. And a lot of this is just playing and moving around with it. There's no kind of fast and ready formula. I like to just make sure that if I'm using a lot of color, that I kind of spread that color around and not have clumps of it. So I also don't want to have similar flowers together. Like right now I have kind of similar shaped flowers in the top right corner, and I believe I end up moving the green one out of there because I feel like it's just too much of that flower, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I didn't move it out of there, and I probably should have. And I'm just going to cut a whole bunch of these here and put them on to the page. And I really like, to me, it's really a cheap alternative to buying embellishments. It's just fussy cutting on other paper. It's kind of time intense. A lot of people don't like that, but I find it kind of therapeutic and relaxing. And it's pretty cheap. I mean, a piece of paper in Canada is about $1.25. So really, for $1.25, I'm Canadian, which is American, probably about 90 cents. I pretty much will do almost this whole page. So that will be the embellishing on the page, which is fairly reasonable, I think. So I'm just going to fool around here and add more flowers. And then I kind of decide as I'm going along that I need more flowers to kind of fill in the actual title part. So I've added a few little tiny ones there in the O and the P. And I kind of like how that looks, but I feel like I need to add a few more small ones. So I will end up grabbing my paper again. Here I go. And just cutting some more of these kind of long, droopy ones. And then I will end up going back later on and cutting out some more tiny ones. And although this seems pretty fussy, because it is fussy cutting, it adds a big impact just to have that little bit of movement from the paper in and around your title. Definitely, if this for stickers, I don't even think you would get this many flowers on a sticker sheet. So that's pretty good, I think. Fussy cutting is definitely not for everyone, but there's so many pretty floral papers out right now. It's almost a shame not to cut them out and use them. It's usually pretty easy to use them in this kind of way than having a whole sheet and using a whole busy flower sheet at one time. To me, it's harder than actually cutting it out and just using it like this. So, and the good thing about this too is you can kind of move things around as you want before you stick it down. I'm going to end up sticking it here in amongst my title, just to fill in kind of the gap between the hello and the spring. And then really all there's left to adding to this layout is something else along the bottom. It's pretty plain, and I'm going to leave it pretty plain because the top is pretty busy. So I'm not going to really fool around too much with that. Here's some smaller flowers I'm going to cut out. But I really wanted to kind of stamp something on there. So I'm going to stamp a bit of like journaling because I don't ever really write journaling because my handwriting is pretty atrocious. So I'm just going to add the flowers, and then you'll see that I use a big stamp to stamp my journaling, and I actually kind of ruin it, my page, I think, with the big stamp. So you'll see that's more to come. So the first part right now is just filling it in. So you can see I'm adding some purple flowers because I kind of had purple on both sides of the page and not across the center. So because I'm going like across the whole side of the whole top of the page, I'm trying to make sure that I fill that all in. Now the worst part about this is that this says hello spring, but in reality up here where I live in Canada, we actually don't really get a lot of spring weather. We pretty much get winter and then we get summer. So this photo was probably taken in June, which I guess for most people would be considered summer, but I think for us that's kind of like the ending of spring because we don't really get a really longer season of where you get a whole bunch of the buds on the trees. It seems to happen pretty quickly. Things dry up very fast and get nice. So to me, we don't get a ton of spring. We don't get tons of rain either. It's hard for spring photos. So this is the springiest spring photo that I could find. But I've added some doodlebug buttons. Those are like my favorite shaped buttons. They're awesome. And I'm just going to fill in some of these flowers here with enamel dots. So I have a whole big stash of them. And I like filling in the centers of the flowers with them. It just kind of makes them more dimensional, makes them look like they came that way rather than being cut out of paper. And then in the actual cut file, which is what we started with, is just out of white cardstock. So I added some enamel dots just to the center of the small little white flowers on there. And then what else did I do? I'm just going to add a little bit of chroma pieces behind these little wispy pink buds at the top. And continue adding enamel dots. I don't really add a whole lot else to this layout. You'll see I'll add a little bit later on right away underneath my photo once I do my stamping and mess my whole page up. And fill in some buds here on the flowers. And I really like the enamel dots that come in a really big sheet where you get a ton of different colors. I really like that. The ones there I just use some basic gray, and I use basic gray. And then I thought I would just add a little bit more color in behind this button because the button was too small for the center of the flower. So I always stitch on pretty much mostly all of my buttons. I sew them usually directly to the page, but because I put foam adhesive underneath there, I'm just going to stitch it onto the back of this punch circle and then use a glue dot and just to kind of get it in place. What you can't see I'm really doing, can't really see it really close, is I'm just taking that circle and I just kind of cut slits all the way around it so it looks more like the inside of a bud of a flower. Hopefully you'll see that a little bit better when I do the close-up shot. And because the circle's still pretty small, I'm going to do it again with a larger circle of a different color just to kind of layer it. You might be able to see more of what I'm doing now. I'm just going around creating almost like a fringe circle. And I'm kind of addicted to that right now, so I'll be honest, you'll see that on probably 3 layouts coming to the YouTube soon because they kind of looked pretty cute on here, and then I ended up doing it right after. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to punch 2 different circles, and instead of doing them separate, I'm just going to do it all at one time, even though they're different size circles. And there doesn't need to be a perfect way to do this. You just need to cut and stick, and I'm going to layer them together with a tiny bit of foam adhesive, and then stick that there in the middle of my other flower and trim off the excess. And that just kind of pretties it up. So when I put my button on, it kind of fits in there a little bit better. It's not so just button on paper. It kind of adds another tiny bit of layer in there. And you can see I'm sewing directly to the paper, which is for the most part what I would do. And then just tie it in a knot in the back and you're done. Bingo. Now I'm going to, my glue dot, I need the glue dot underneath these buttons. Sometimes they're a little bit wiggly if there's a bunch of paper underneath. So I have some stamps here, and I'm going to do some stamping. I usually prime my stamps if I've never really used them before with an eraser, and I did that. These are ones that were made for Crop and Create for one of the events we had that I bought there. And I added the date, and then I realized, no, I need to add some journaling. So I thought I have this huge pebble stamp, and I thought I would give it a try. And I've had it for a while, and I haven't really used it much. But I can tell you, I should have practiced it more before I put it on my page, because I got the little spacers in between the words printed, and I'll show it to you in the close-up. It kind of looked horrendous. I wasn't super happy with that. I wish I had just typed it out on my computer and done some journaling. So what I'm doing now is I'm just cutting some strips out of another piece of paper, and I'm just going to add make a little tag, and then add it beside my journaling, kind of to cover up some of the little blobby stamps that I did, which is my own terrible stamping. And then I thought, oh, I have this cute triangle with the pink hearts. Maybe I'll tuck it into my photo, and it just didn't work. So I ended up forgetting that idea and tossing it out. But no scrap should be left unseen. I'm just going to add a little other pop of color and then sew that together. So here it is. After all that talking, for me is the finished cut file section of layout. I really like how this part turned out. It's nice and colorful and fun. And there's the completed layout. You can maybe see my blobs from stamping on the bottom. Anyway, thanks for stopping by.